Welcome to the Hockey Podcast. I am Luke Lipinski.
And I'm Doug Cannon.
On today's show, it's playoffs, and, of course, more playoffs. The Western Conference matchups are set. The Eastern Conference matchups are waiting for one final game of the regular season. That, of course, between Boston and Ottawa.
We're also going to have some news and notes from around the world of hockey for you, including some recent GM firings.
First up, Doug, the Western Conference. All right, Doug, here we are. The regular season's basically done. We know all 16 playoff teams, and got to start in the West, where all season long we knew nothing. And now, here we are, that's the only conference where we actually know who's playing who. And I got to say, looking at these matchups, I'm almost slightly more intrigued by the East, just kind of because of the way things broke down in the West, just the matchups, and we'll get into that more as we go on. But what are your thoughts on the Western Conference now?
Well, I'm stunned that we know who's playing. I'm just
It's a good start.
It's a good start. Let's start with Chicago and Minnesota.
All right, Chicago wins. So now on to...
Yeah. I was, quickly before we started, I was looking at some numbers.
Yeah.
Corey Crawford, .926 with a 1.94 goals against. His backup, Ray Emery.
Ray Emery's even better, isn't he?
Just .922.
Okay.
Also a 1.94. I don't know how you beat that, especially Minnesota.
Well, that's the thing. I think if you look at all 16 teams, and we're going to today, Minnesota, to me, is the weakest of the 16 teams, and they're playing Chicago, who, if they're not the strongest, they're one of the top two, for sure. I mean,
absolutely.
The Blackhawks, not only the President's Trophy winners, which, as of today, means nothing, but 18-3-3 at home, that does mean something, especially when you have home ice all the way through the playoffs. And Minnesota's just, I wasn't impressed by the Wild. I really wasn't.
Chicago won 36 of 48 games.
See, that I'm impressed by.
Yeah, so am I. And Minnesota, I'm with you. I am not impressed for that hefty price tag. They do not impress me, and I do not think that they're going to last long.
It's nice to see them in because Minnesota is a great hockey state in the U.S.
Right.
So don't get me wrong. It's not like I'm rooting against them, but I just look at how they came down the stretch. I mean, Columbus is right there fighting for a playoff spot. Detroit's there. There was a couple other teams. The Coyotes, Dallas were in there as well. Minnesota, though, their last two games, they basically just needed to win one of them, and they go out and lose 6-1 to Edmonton at home. And so then all of a sudden you have to beat Colorado, and I mean, Colorado's got nothing to play for, and they almost lost to them.
Right, and the Edmonton's the ones that surprised me. I mean, you're on home ice.
Yeah, with a chance to get to the playoffs.
Right, and just you're squeaking. So, next.
One last thing on Minnesota. You hit it right there. That's a team that, to me, made the playoffs just because they spent money.
Right.
And they barely made the playoffs.
And they barely made the playoffs in a 48-game schedule.
And I don't know if we'll get into this today or maybe next week, but I think there's teams that didn't make the playoffs that are better than Minnesota.
Yeah, let's save that for the next time.
Okay.
So, 2-7.
Well, this one's going to be weird. Detroit and Anaheim. You're looking at two teams that are going different directions right now.
Mm-hmm.
Anaheim is a team, I don't know if you remember the start of the year, but that was kind of like my sneaky pick to come out of the Western Conference to go to the Stanley Cup, and it looked great for the first month and a half. I mean, they have not been impressive to me at all down the stretch. And Detroit, they do what they have to do. They win 4 straight to close out the year, and not only make the playoffs, they jump up to 7. You're really going to pick against Detroit this time of year?
The month of April, Anaheim was 7 wins, 6 losses out of the 13 games. And those 6 losses, they didn't look strong. Didn't look strong at all.
No. And, you have to take it with a grain of salt. They had nothing really to play for. They won the Pacific Division so early.
Okay, and I'm going to interrupt you right there. I'm going to stop you right there.
What if I wasn't done?
Well, it's too bad.
Okay.
Chicago didn't have anything to play for either.
Yeah, Chicago, to me, was very impressive. They went through, both those teams played all the teams in the middle of the Western Conference that were fighting for playoff spots. And Anaheim lost to all of them, and Chicago beat most of them.
Chicago never took the foot off the gas pedal. Not once did they let off that gas pedal.
No, their regular season finale, they sat some players against St. Louis. I don't have a problem with that.
And Anaheim clearly decided to sit back.
Which, I mean, that's fine if you think you can flip the switch again. But the problem that you have now if you're Anaheim is, here you go, playoffs start Tuesday night. You're going to flip the switch against Detroit?
Detroit's hot right now, man. They're just rolling. I mean, they've been winning when they needed to win. You and I didn't think they might not squeak in, and we were like, holy cow, Detroit not in the playoffs? How is that possible? And you know what? They do what they need to do, and if Jimmy Howard gets hot, look out. Anaheim is going to have a battle on their hands. Now, Anaheim is big. They're strong. They're talented. Hiller, well, he's not his percentage is .913. He's 2.36 GAA. I mean, he could, but I don't know, man. My money's on Detroit.
I mean, if I had to pick, Detroit won the regular season series. Anaheim probably has more talent top to bottom, and I don't want to write them off because when they're playing their best hockey, I mean, that's a potential Stanley Cup winner. Mm-hmm. But they're not playing it right now, and this is really when it matters. And Detroit, it's tough to pick against Detroit. It was late in the season when you realized, here we are, there's a week left, Detroit controls their own destiny. Or are we really shocked they went 4-0 in those final 4 games?
No, I'm not.
No. So this is where it gets kind of strange for me, the two middle series, and this is where I was saying maybe I'm more intrigued by the East. You got San Jose and Vancouver.
You got a coin, let's flip it.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean,
I don't see one team being stronger than the other team. I think that's a 7-game series in my opinion.
And it robs us of the great American/Canadian tradition of Vancouver melting down on themselves every year in the playoffs and the media just piling on. And
right.
I don't think San Jose can take advantage of the fact that Vancouver's going in with Corey Schneider, who's missed a few games. Sounds like he's probably going to be ready for Game 1. Roberto Luongo gave up 7 goals in the season finale and then stormed out of the arena and was left in there for all 7 goals. Mm-hmm. So this is the perfect, all right, everybody in Vancouver just start piling on Luongo and causing all this controversy and making your own team worse by adding extra pressure when you don't need it. Except San Jose's not going to do anything.
No. They have a tradition of not doing anything.
That's the thing. 2 teams that have a tradition of not doing anything. One of them's going to have to do something.
The interesting one is the kid stuck right in the middle.
Yeah.
Defending champs and St. Louis.
So here you go. You have L.A. You've got St. Louis. L.A. Destroyed them last year in the playoffs. I don't even know if you remember that series because it was so quickly done. St. Louis had a great year last year. Mm-hmm. And L.A. it just destroyed them. There's no better way to put it. It felt like that series was 1 game. And so is it going to be different this year?
I don't know. I mean, you got Quick and Bernier. I mean, it's a great tandem. You've also got Elliott and Halak. So, I mean, goaltending-wise, 2 strong teams.
Yeah.
St. Louis is 7-3 in their last 10 heading into the playoffs. So they're peaking really at a really nice time.
Yeah, my thought on LA all year long is, like last year they won the Stanley Cup, whatever. I mean, there's personal feelings aside around a few players on the Kings. It was good to see a West Coast team win the Stanley Cup. And they earned it. But a lot of things went their way last year, and I don't think all of those things are going to go their way again this year.
Yeah, and one of those things was Jonathan Quick, and I don't think he's the same goaltender.
No, he's not, and he has to be for them to have a chance to win. And the other thing about LA, their home record is fine. Their home record's very good, but their road record's not great at all. And that's a team that, I mean, they're on the road to start the series. Their home record on the year, 19-4-1, but just 8-12-4 on the road. It doesn't mean that they're inept on the road, but it's like you're going to play St. Louis, who's pretty good at home too. I think home ice might actually decide that series. I don't know. I mean, if you're gonna look at these 4 first-round matchups in the West and you're going to say you have to pick the winner in each one, I'm not going to pick against the defending Stanley Cup champs in round 1 because they haven't really lost anything, but I don't see them coming out of the West this year.
No, I'm telling you, St. Louis is a strong, strong team, and I have to keep going back, momentum. I mean, coaches talk about momentum all the time, and momentum is clearly in St. Louis's favor. And real quick, no pun intended.
Oh, geez. Here we go again with this.
902, 245.
That's Jonathan Quick's numbers?
That's Quick's numbers.
I mean, this was a weird year for goalies in general.
True.
So I think we'll have a better feel after the first maybe 2 games of the series. If he comes out and even if St. Louis has won one and it's split, if Quick's looking like the Jonathan Quick of last year, I think you have to go with the Kings. I mean, that's great to make a prediction 2 games into a series, but I think you get the point there. That's kind of why I like the Eastern Conference more, is because to me, LA and St. Louis are second-round teams, and San Jose and Vancouver maybe aren't. I think if this is San Jose and St. Louis and LA and Vancouver, I have 2 clear winners I'm picking. Vancouver's weird to me, though, because they could be out in the first round in 5 games, or they could win the Stanley Cup. I don't know there's another team like that in the playoffs.
Vancouver's going to be all goaltending. It's got to be settled.
Not good.
It's not a good situation in that team, and you don't know if that's going to filter through the room.
It always does.
Right.
This time of year. And the thing is, it should be a good situation because this year, with the shortened season, the condensed schedule, they have 2 good goalies. Mm-hmm. It should be an advantage.
Right.
But it's not in that environment if anything goes wrong.
I don't know, man. We're going to have to wait and see. My money's on St. Louis, San Jose, Detroit, Chicago.
Yeah, see, I think I would go L.A., Vancouver, Detroit, Chicago. But I don't know that you can pick against Chicago. And the worst thing is I really wanted Detroit, Chicago in the first round. And instead,
I don't think Chicago wanted that, though.
No, they didn't. I'm sure
they'll take Minnesota.
Minnesota wanted that. But Minnesota's consolation prize for making all the way to the 8th seed is getting Chicago in the first round. So thanks for playing. Eastern Conference now not as well set as we're recording this as the Western Conference, but we know who the 8 teams are. And so we're not going to be able to sit here and pick between each series, but we can give you a good enough preview just based on what we've seen from these teams this year. So I don't know, do you want to just start at the top with the number 1 seed and work our way down 1 through 8, or do you want to...
let's just do that. And I'm just going to do, for full disclosure, I grew up in Toronto. So I'll be rooting for the Maple Leafs.
Does that explain why I'm looking at a Maple Leafs puck as we record this?
Yes, okay. Absolutely. So I just putting it out there. I'm just saying, I grew up in Toronto, so I got to root for my Leafs.
So everybody just turned the podcast off.
Yep.
That's fine.
No, I'm not listening to that guy anymore.
But they should appreciate the fact that I have to deal with it. So.
Well, I have to deal with the fact that you're a Penguins fan.
I was going to try and just... try and unbiasedly report on the Eastern Conference playoffs this year. But
it's unbiased. I'm just saying. I'm a Leaf fan. So, because a lot of my comments are going to come full circle to that.
How great is it going to be if the Penguins and Maple Leafs somehow play in the second round, which I guess could happen.
Could happen.
All right, well, let's
start from the top.
Okay. No, let's start from the bottom. Let's do that.
Okay.
That's better. So let's start with right now Ottawa. And the Senators are currently the 8th seed. Again, I don't want to get too much into that because they could easily be the 7th seed by the time I'm finished with this sentence. But I think the thing to take away with Ottawa is the fact that Erik Karlsson came back from, I don't know what the official diagnosis was other than lower body injury, but it
was Achilles heel.
He cut it 70%. I don't know how he came back in 10 weeks. And then not only that, his first game plays over 27 minutes, gets 2 assists.
I'll be honest with you, I had him on a fantasy team.
Yes, you did.
I was very disappointed when he got hurt for selfish reasons. So the season progresses, blah, 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 blah. And the other day, I fire up my computer, and I see him skating.
Yeah, playing.
I'm like, what? So I'm with you. I'm like, I don't know how he comes back from an injury like that'll usually knock most players off for a season.
I mean, it's not the same as what Kobe Bryant's doing in the NBA, but they're talking like Kobe Bryant's career might be over. And obviously, he's 16 years older than
he's
Erik
also
Karlsson
an NBA player.
Well, that's a fair point, but how ridiculous is it? Erik Karlsson, he doesn't just pop his Achilles, he gets it cut off with a skate. 10 weeks later, he's playing.
Right.
And he looked good in his the small sample size we have heading into the playoffs since he came back from the injury. He makes that team dangerous. Like, they're legitimately, you just said it right there, you can't replace a player like him in fantasy hockey. You can't replace him in the NHL either. There's not another defenseman who scores so many points.
And has a strong plus-minus.
Yeah, I mean, he does everything.
The only other one that comes to my mind right away, and we're close to it, is Oliver Ekman-Larsson on the Coyotes roster.
There you go. And that's, I think, what Oliver Ekman-Larsson could be in a year or two. Who
Absolutely.
knows? But, I mean, again, you're talking maybe 2 players. I'm sure there's maybe 1 or 2 other ones we're forgetting, but how many players in the NHL? To have a player like that makes a difference for a team like Ottawa that, I mean, they're going to be in a tough spot because losing him and losing Jason Spezza and losing Craig Anderson dropped them down the standings.
Absolutely.
So you got to give Paul McLean a ton of credit as a coach for what he did and for that mustache, which is just amazing. It's glorious. But now they're going to be probably playing Pittsburgh possibly.
That's
in the first
so
round.
messed up. I mean, because it affects so many teams. I mean, if Ottawa loses today, they're in 8th. So they play the Penguins,
which I kind of want to see.
And I think that'll be a good series, but I think the Penguins will come out of it. If Ottawa wins, then Penguins are playing the Islanders.
Which I kind of want to see that too. I just want to see playoff hockey.
I'm just happy that the Islanders are there.
I am. It's nice. The first time since 2006-2007 season, and they could be a factor depending who they play.
Absolutely. It's just that franchise next to the Coyotes have gone through so much. Yeah. It's nice to see them in the playoffs.
Everybody talked about how much Columbus has gone through. Columbus just wasn't winning games. They didn't go through stuff off the ice like the Islanders and the Coyotes did.
Right.
And the Coyotes obviously had a great run last year. And
the only way the Islanders solved their off-ice problem is they're moving to Brooklyn.
Yeah. So
figure.
Big whoop. That's 15 miles.
Yeah. So then, we're back to the Islanders in Ottawa again with the 7 and the 2, but the 2's not decided.
Yeah. Well, and just real quick on Ottawa, if it's Ottawa-Pittsburgh, how great is that series? Because, of course, it's Pittsburgh who, I don't think Matt Cook purposely went in there like a surgeon and sliced Erik Karlsson's, but, there are people in Ottawa who believe that somehow, and it's going to be an ugly
series.
Including
Ottawa's owner.
Yeah, I mean, not
he
just
was pretty vocal.
With the forensic investigation, which that really should be a TV show. I mean, how is that not a show in Canada? CSI Ottawa Pittsburgh.
CSI ... NHL.
CSI Matt Cook. So that right there, just some animosity. Because Pittsburgh last year in Philadelphia, there was all that animosity, and that made for an entertaining series.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's only one storyline. So, I mean, the fans will empty out all their emotions in the first game.
Yeah.
And then the series will start, and then they'll get down to some good hockey. But, I mean, I'm going to jump. We've got Rangers at 6, Washington at 3. That's the only thing that is set on the eastern side. Because, like I said, number 2 is not decided. Boston wins, they're 2. Montreal drops to 4, which I want.
Yes, because as you bravely revealed earlier, you're a Maple Leafs fan, which now leaves you open to ridicule on this podcast. I don't have to hide it.
That's okay. I can take it.
Well,
I've been taking it for a long time.
It's true. At least you're in the playoffs.
I have very thick skin.
And like a Maple Leafs fan, you doubted they were going to make it until about 3 minutes before the show.
Absolutely. I still can't believe they're sitting in the 5th spot.
Yeah. So okay, let's skip over Rangers Washington for a second. So you have Toronto in the 5 spot. My one problem if they play Montreal is that the only series we're going to hear about. If it's Toronto Montreal, they haven't played since 1979. You said.
Yep.
It'd be a nice series. That's fine. From my perspective, I'm American. It gets rid of a Canadian team in the first round. But I don't want to only hear about Toronto and Montreal.
I think you're only going to, on TSN's website and CBC's website. I don't think that's going to filter into the States.
No, but I mean, I don't know. I like the Canadian aspect of it too when it comes to playoff time because they're so passionate about Toronto.
Well, and you've got some big cities though. I mean, you got New York and Washington. Those are some pretty big markets.
That series, I think, is the best of the first round across the board. And that's
going to be 7 solid, hard, skating, grind them out games.
I brought actual numbers to back up my claim here, too.
Oh.
So this is a whole new situation.
Here we go.
First of all, they played last year in the playoffs, 7-game series. Rangers won. In Game 7, which was in New York, this year it's in Washington. So
right.
File that away. Alex Ovechkin, last 23 games, 23 goals, 13 assists, 36 points. I mean, you can't get any better. 23 goals is the same amount that Patrick Kane, Jonathan Toews had all year, and they had good seasons. So Ovechkin's playing his best. Mike Green is playing very good. These are 2 teams that I wanted to pick to go far, and they're going to play each other in the first. It's like when March Madness brackets come out, and you have your teams you're going to pick, and they all are in the same region.
Yeah, it's a shame one of them's going to be out.
Yeah, I mean that should at least be a second-round series, and here's the other number on Washington. They closed out the year. There was a moment, I want to say it was March 19th. They were playing the Penguins on just a meaningless regular season game. And I remember I actually tweeted out the comment of, this used to be the greatest thing in hockey. It used to be Godfather 1 versus Godfather 2, and now it's Bill and Ted's versus Bill and Ted's Part 2. Like it was Godfather versus Bill and Ted's Part 2 because Washington was nothing. 15-2-2 since then.
8-1-1. No less 10.
Yeah. I mean, the Capitals are absolutely rolling, but here's my other numbers. The Rangers, A, they have Lundqvist. B, they're 10-3-1 in April. So these are essentially the 2 hottest teams outside Pittsburgh and Chicago.
Well, that series to me goes to coaching.
Okay, well then you've got Adam Oates, who's new, but he's getting the most out of his players. And then you have Tortorella, which goes back to a previous podcast, and those are tough to find. But Tortorella, we talked about how maybe how that coaching style, do you lose your players at some point because you're always fired up and you're well, that works in the playoffs.
Yeah,
that intensity works.
Yeah, we did discuss the fact that guys like Ovi were buying into Oates' system.
Yeah.
And it's clearly working.
Yeah, how can you not buy in?
Yeah, I mean, the Rangers are full of talent. I mean, but do they want to be beat over the head with a rubber mallet throughout the playoffs because coach isn't happy?
But I think that style is more conducive to the playoffs. I think if you're a player, you expect it to be intense and you expect your coach to be yelling at you if things are going wrong, whereas the middle, game 50 of an 82-game regular season, that gets old.
Well, in the playoffs, I mean, it's a cliche, but every shift really does matter. You can't make a mistake.
And you got two teams that were fighting for their playoff lives for the last month, and they both are rolling now.
I just think it's funny, just to come full circle here, I just think it's funny. I'm sitting here, people can't see this, but we have a whiteboard in the room, and we've got all the matchups, and 4 slots aren't filled because of one game.
Yeah. One game.
One game.
4 teams. 5 teams.
That's unbelievable.
It is, and then that brings us up to Montreal and Boston. So I guess let's go with Boston because they're currently the 4. This is a team that, to me, is built for the playoffs. A lot of talent, tough team. Not a team I want to play in a 7-game series because they're just going to beat you up.
Mm-hmm.
But they don't hold on to leads this year. It's a team that it just seems like it's almost too routine for them that they get into the third period with a 2-goal lead and they let it slip away, which doesn't make any sense to me with the defense they have and the goaltending they have.
Well, if things go the way I think they're going to go, Boston's going to be in 2. Islanders are going to be 7. I feel sorry for the Islanders. I don't see Boston losing that series. Though that would put Pitt against Ottawa. I see Pitt winning that one. Rangers, I see winning that one. And the Toronto-Montreal, that's a coin toss for me.
See, I don't know that it is for me. I actually think Toronto wins that series because Montreal is the opposite of these Washington Rangers type teams that are coming in playing good hockey. Montreal kind of stumbling. It's tough to say that because they could win their division. I mean, they've had a very good year, but they're kind of like Anaheim, where that really good year was earlier in the year. So
right.
Montreal's been a kind of a deceptive team all year. They got a lot of young guys that are just getting by, and then they're winning games on Carey Price. But then Carey Price has had games where he's given up 5-6 goals, and it's just a matter, like you said earlier, it comes back to goaltending. Which Carey Price do you get? Do not give me the line about is he going to carry them through the playoffs, because it took me a week to get over that.
Sorry.
Pittsburgh, we got to talk about them before we go, right? Or are we out of time? We're going to just cut Pittsburgh.
Let's go, real quick.
They looked unstoppable the other night against Carolina. I know they're not playing Carolina in the playoffs.
That's without Sid.
Yeah, that's the thing now. Everybody's back. James Neal comes back. First game back, it's a hat trick. Malkin's back. Paul Martin's back. Chris Letang's back. You and I kind of discussed this off the air. My whole thing coming up to these playoffs was if they play anybody than the Rangers in round 1, I think they win.
Mm-hmm.
They got lucky. They don't have to play the Rangers in round 1. Anything can happen. It's the playoffs. But if you're the Penguins, if I'm the Penguins, I'm not rushing Crosby back until I'm behind in a series. How about that? Or it's tied.
I agreed with you off air on that. I don't. If you're winning, why risk it? Let him be 100%. And if it's the second round, it's the second round. You've got enough horses on that team that it's okay to let him sit.
That's the thing. We just rattled off 5 of them, and they have Iginla, and they have Morrow, who's playing great.
Yeah, you forgot Jerome. Yeah, absolutely.
Jussi Jokinen scores every game since they picked him up.
So
it almost seems too easy to pick them.
Yeah. So I'm just going to boldly say Ottawa will be 8, Islanders will be 7, Boston will be 2nd, Montreal will be 4th. So I'm going to go Pitt, Boston, New York, and I'll let my heart pick Toronto.
Yeah, I would go the same with that. Although that is not a discount of what Washington has done at all. I'm going to take the Rangers because I think they are the team.
That thing's going full series. That is not going to be decided in any kind of a sweep.
Then Game 7's in Washington. It's tough to pick against that team, but I just feel like there's more ways the Rangers can win, and they have the better goalie. Holtby's been playing fine, but Lundqvist's the best goalie.
Yeah.
So if Ovechkin, he looks unstoppable right now, but if you do slow him down for 2 games, then Washington's done. Final segment here, we'll look away from the playoffs for just a couple minutes, some of the news and notes That's what we're calling this, right?
News and notes.
Last time I called it final segment, and you almost threw me out of your house. Okay, so news and notes. Let's start with Martin St. Louis. I feel like we have to give him some credit.
Some credit?
Yes, some credit. 37 years old. Depending where you're looking, 5'8", 176 pounds. That's small.
Small for the NHL.
Yeah, I mean, it's small just to be playing hockey at any level. What this guy went through just to get into the NHL, won the scoring trophy back in 2004, wins it again. He wins the scoring race, the Art Ross, this year with 60 points in 48 games. That's remarkable. I mean, over the course of an 82-game season, that's 102 points.
Right.
And look, I get Sidney Crosby missed basically a quarter of the season and was still 4 points off. So, and Martin St. Louis even said that after he won. He's like, look, I realize this is kind of a weird award. I could have a worse season and win this year and have a great season some other year and not win it. But so what? He won it, and that's pretty impressive.
It typifies, though, he's that type of guy that he is a truly team player. Because one of his quotes after winning the Art Ross was, I'd rather be in the playoffs.
Yeah.
I'd rather be playing in the here's the trophy. I just want to play in the playoffs. And one of the reasons I say that he's such a team player is that if you look at the top scorers in the league and you look at St. Louis, Ovechkin, Crosby. Ovechkin has 32 goals. He leads everybody with 32 goals.
And all of them came this week.
Yeah. St. Louis only had 17 goals, but he had 43 assists. Crosby had 41 assists with 56. He had 56 points overall.
Well, let me jump in real quick because you brought up Crosby, and so I have to jump in.
Sure.
To your point of him making his teammates better, he's been skating with Pascal Dupuis and Chris Kunitz all year. Chris Kunitz, 22 goals, 30 assists this year playing on that line. And Pascal Dupuis, I don't know the exact numbers, but he had 20 goals this year. It has to be the first time he's ever done it in his career. So that's the definition of making your line mates and your teammates better.
Making your team better. That's what I'm going. And I said off the air, too, 17 goals, big deal. Ovi's got 32. But 17 goals in 48 games. Double that. He's got 40 goals in an 82-game season. Most GMs are happy if they got a roster of guys scoring 20 goals.
Yeah. Over the course of a full season, he's probably getting you 30 goals, 72 assists. I mean, that's nice.
The assist numbers, I would rather have that guy that can make everybody around him part of the game so that when an opponent comes, they don't know who's going to score. Whereas Ovi, he's scoring a lot, but he's not getting anybody else involved in the game.
Well, that's where it gets interesting is this time of year. Because you can make the case, St. Louis helps his team more. I would make the case that Ovechkin helps the Capitals quite a bit, but it's a different way. It's just basically brute force. I'm going to score the goal and we're going to win. But you just said it. If they shut down Ovechkin in the playoffs, that's it. He's not going to be able to get his other teammates involved nearly as well as St. Louis. But what's weird about St. Louis, the guy that's number 2 in the scoring race is Steven Stamkos with 57 points, and yet Tampa was nowhere near the playoffs.
That's amazing.
How does that happen?
How does that happen?
You look at the other guys in the top 10, some of these names, Ovechkin, Crosby, Patrick Kane, mentioned Kunitz, Phil Kessel's in the playoffs, Getzlaf's in the playoffs. The only other guys that aren't in the playoffs are Eric Stahl and Taylor Hall, but they didn't have much help. St. Louis and Stamkos just score a couple goals every game, and they can't do anything in Tampa with that.
And their only problem is that with a team like Tampa, you have to stop the puck as well.
Yeah, well, they haven't gotten to that, but maybe next year.
Maybe next year.
It's a complicated game.
So we had a couple of firings.
Yeah, I mean, it's
already
inevitable. Probably as we're recording this, somebody else got fired, but we know that Joe Nieuwendyk is out as the GM in Dallas.
And he went 22-4. The Dallas did.
Yeah.
I mean, wasn't a bad season, wasn't a great season. TSN's reporting that they're looking at Jim Nill, the assistant GM in Detroit, to take his place.
Just take everybody from Detroit. Why not? I love the quotes in situations like this where the owner or whoever is like, "Oh yeah, we're really happy with the job Joe did, and he's a great face for our franchise, and he's a great GM." Okay, then why is he not your GM anymore? Like, what's? I mean, there's a disconnect there. Dallas has been weird. They've missed the playoffs 5 straight years. This year, a decent record, especially because they were sellers at the trade deadline. But you go back to before the season, they bring in Jaromir Jagr and Ray Whitney and somebody else, Derek Roy.
Right.
And this is what's weird about Dallas. They do this every year. They bring those guys in, and then they get rid of them at the trade deadline. And so what's going on there?
And Yager was doing quite well.
He was fine.
I'm like, why'd you let him go?
And Dallas down the stretch, I mean, they didn't miss the playoffs by all that much. They finished with, well, they completely just fell apart at the end, losing 5 in a row. But, maybe they finished with 48 points, so they do miss the playoffs by quite a bit, but they were still in it in the final 3 or 4 days.
Right.
And
Because we talked about it last week.
Yeah. But you're playing with none of the players you brought in at that point. So what's you have to pick a plan and go with it. And Dallas seems to, I don't understand what they're doing. I haven't understood what they were doing since they let Dave Tippett go 4+ years ago.
Well, the Coyotes are happy they did.
That is true. And I'm sure Dallas regrets that move quite a bit.
So the other guy out the door was Mr. Sacco in Colorado.
It's a good transition because Tippett, his first year with the Coyotes, wins the Jack Adams Award. One of the finalists is Joe Sacco that year.
Right.
And then I haven't really seen him since.
Not much. He went 130, 134, and 30 in 4 seasons. So, okay.
That's one of those teams.
It's okay.
You feel like with the talent they have, they should be better, but I don't really think they should be good.
They should be better than they were this season. They only had 16 wins.
We were talking about this.
We're talking Colorado.
Yeah. Semyon Varlamov is like their big goaltending acquisition 2 years ago, and he hadn't won a road game all year. I think he gets credited for a win in their last road game, but he played like 5 minutes and stepped into a tie game.
Still got the credit for it.
So, yeah, he was 0-14-2 on the road before that. You can't win when that's your number one goalie. Let's be honest. The reason Joe Sacco is out is because they already had a Joe Sakic, and it's just too confusing in the front office, right? I mean, you can't. What are you going to do?
Well, wonder if Mr. Sakic's going to jump onto the bench.
Then
we'll all be messed up.
He's going to hire a guy named Joe Sakic.
Well, in Joe Sacco, he's no longer a bench boss. He's going to be taking over for Team USA.
Yeah, now he's coaching a whole country.
And I kind of scratched my head.
Well, you're scratching your head, but you also brought this up to me a couple days ago. And
you didn't believe me.
There was some laughter on your part, and it was hurtful. But you mocked me as an American that Joe Sacco would be coaching us. Although, to be fair, I thought you were talking about the Olympics, and I quickly shot that down. But, yeah, the Worlds are in May
3rd. Yeah, they start May 3rd in Helsinki. And Team USA is opening up against Austria.
Such a weird tournament just because of when it is.
Right.
And I was talking to some of the players out at the Coyotes camp today, and they're like, yeah, I'm excited to play for my country, but I also want to be in the playoffs. And that's the way the whole tournament is structured. Like, you're only in that tournament
if you're not in the playoffs.
And then guys just come over midway through. Like it's the Alex Ovechkin thing where every year when the Capitals
we're out, so I'll fly over there and I'll go play for Russia.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden Russia gets really good.
Right. And the final note is Canada in the U18 World Championships defeated Team USA 3-2. Canada takes the gold this year.
You're just bringing that up to hurt me.
I have some Canadian roots.
Yeah, that's become quite apparent over the last half hour. Well, you didn't bring this up. Dave Tippett, coaching with Canada in the Worlds with Lindy Ruff.
With Lindy Ruff, that's right.
And that's the same thing, mixed emotions. And Dave Tippett even said that. I want to be coaching in the playoffs, but at the same time, such an honor to represent your country.
Well, yeah, I mean, how do you say no?
You don't.
You don't.
Nobody does.
Nobody does. You cannot say no to that. And just one last thing, I mentioned the Canada U18 win. I'm really, really impressed because every year it seems it's Canada versus USA for that gold medal. And it's just such a huge compliment to USA Hockey with the National Development Program and what they've done to advance hockey in the States. And it's at the U18 level, it's at higher, older levels, the U21. I mean, these guys are really, really churning out some really good hockey players. And North America, I'm sorry, is dominating.
It's weird. It's great to see from, if you're in this country, obviously. I think it's just great for the game in general and the international scene, but Canada's going to be there every year. And even this year in the main juniors back in December, Canada's not in the gold medal game, but they're the favorite all the way through until the U.S. takes them out in the semis, and then they're there in the bronze game.
Right.
So it is weird. It's Canada's expected to be there. I think the U.S. has raised the bar to the point where they're expected to at least be in the Final Four every time out now.
Yeah, and you know what? We'll look at the numbers for next week because the scouting report came out for the draft coming up in June, and we'll just do a little comparison with North America versus European skaters and stuff like that. I think North America is cranking out some good product
this year, especially. I don't, like you said, we'll look closer, but I know the top 3 players that are projected to go in the draft are all North American.
Right.
And quick note on that: draft lottery is Monday, which is not nearly as exciting as the playoffs, which start on Tuesday, but it's good for people like me who can't go a full day without hockey.
There's nothing else to say.
That's why I said it.